Would you like to see a magic trick?
The movie begins in 1978 in Denver. One fine afternoon, we see parents and children gathered for a little league baseball game where we see Gwen rooting for Finney, her brother. Finney succeeds in throwing 2 strikes on his pitches, but his side loses when another player named Bruce hits the 3rd pitch for a home run. After the game, Bruce compliments Finney, stating that he played exceptionally well and has a mint arm. Later, as Bruce is heading back home on his bike, he comes to a complete halt when he notices a black van. Next, the siblings are making their way to school. Finney spots the flyer for Bruce, who has been missing for days. Then they see a crowd of students gathered where the school bully, Moose, is provoking another boy named Robin. However, since Robin is a skilled fighter, he overcomes the situation and beats him badly. When Finney leaves the place feeling uneasy, Gwen follows him, saying Moose deserves to be punished because he's a bad guy. She continues by saying that Robin is the toughest student at the school since the grabber abducted their former bully, Vance. Hearing this, Finney feels weird and asks her not to mention his name again. In the next scene, we see 3 boys follow Finney into the bathroom and start bullying him. Just then, Robin walks in, which scares the guys when he talks of beating up Moose. Furthermore, he threatens the bullies and warns them to stay away from Finney. After they leave, Robin tells him that he will eventually need to fight for himself as the bullies won't stop. Then he asks Finney for help with his math homework, and Finney agrees. The Black Phone is a movie about a shy but clever 13-year-old boy named Finney, who is held in a soundproof basement by a sadistic masked killer. When a disconnected phone on the wall starts to ring, he realizes that he can hear the voices of the murderer's previous victims. Watch how they're dead set motivated to make sure that what happened to them doesn't happen to Finney. Now back to the movie. Gwen is summoned to the principal's office, where she's questioned by 2 detectives regarding what she told Bruce's sister. She claims to have had a dream in which a man carrying black balloons kidnaps Bruce. Hearing this, the investigators reveal to her that black balloons were discovered in the spot where the kids were taken. However, the details were never made available to the public. Therefore, the detective feels as though she's hiding something and asks how she found out about the black balloons. Gwen states that sometimes she dreams about things that are actually true. She further claims that she gets dreams linked to the missing children, but she cannot explain the meaning behind these dreams. Next, Finney wakes up to find his father beating Gwen because the other day, the cops visited him at his home to inquire about her dreams. He beats her more severely after she breaks his liquor bottle. Then he says to her that she isn't her mother, therefore she doesn't see things that aren't there. The terrified girl is compelled to agree since he insists that her dreams are nothing more than delusions. In the meantime, Finney is furiously observing this, but he's helpless to act against his father. On the other hand, Robin notices a man exiting a black van as he makes his way from the store. Soon after, the news of Robin's disappearance reaches everyone in the neighborhood. Hearing this, Finney is devastated since he was close to Robin. He asks Gwen to look into her dreams for any hints of Robin, but she responds that she has no control over it. However, she asks Jesus for a hint to help her find Robin. Now, since Robin is no longer around to protect him, the bullies turn on Finney and begin to assault him. In the meantime, Gwen defends him by hitting one bully in the head with a rock, causing him to bleed. However, she also receives a kick to the face, while the other 2 bullies continue beating Finney. Later, everyone in the class is asked to pair up for a science project. Meanwhile, Finney's crush Donna approaches him and offers to be his partner, which he awkwardly and gladly accepts. She expresses that she feels bad for Finney as he's constantly bullied and comments on how nice it is that he and his sister are so close. While arriving home, Gwen teases Finney by mentioning Donna's name. Soon after, they part ways and Gwen leaves to spend the night at a friend's house. As he walks alone on the road, Finney spots a man stumbling out of a black van and dropping groceries. He offers to help him, and the man identifies himself as a magician. Suddenly, Finney notices the black balloons in his van. Suddenly, the man tries to attack Finney, but swiftly he uses a pen to stab him in the arm. However, the grabber sprays a chemical into Finney's mouth to knock him unconscious and throws him into the van. Next, Finney wakes up in a basement where the grabber complains that Finney severely damaged his arm. However, he promises he won't hurt him anymore and tells him that he's special. Suddenly, a phone rings, and the grabber leaves the place while promising to return as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Finney notices a black phone on the wall which is disconnected. In the meantime, Gwen receives a call regarding Finney's disappearance while she's at a friend's house. She's horrified and runs to her house upon realizing that her brother has been abducted. Meanwhile, the disappearance is also reported to the police, and Gwen prays for her brother's safety. On the other hand, the ringing of the black phone awakens Finney, but moments later, the grabber arrives and informs him that the phone doesn't work. Also, he makes a promise to Finney that he won't act against his will, but first must handle his situation. Finney believes that the grabber is about to get caught. Therefore, he requests the grabber to release him blindfolded and makes a promise not to inform the authorities. Hearing this, the grabber laughs and casually says that it's not about the police. Finney threatens to shout because he thinks there's another person in the house, but the grabber responds that no matter how loud he screams, no one will be able to hear him because the basement is soundproof. After he leaves, Finney begins screaming, but unfortunately no one can hear him. Furthermore, he tries to open the window, but it's too high. Moments later, he picks up the phone when it rings again, but no one is on the other end. Later, when he wakes up, he finds the grabber is staring at him. He says he's hungry and asks for food, but the grabber refuses to give it to him. Being frustrated, he asks why he's there at all, to which the grabber responds that all he wanted to do was look at him and walk away. A while later, the black phone rings again. When Finney answers it, he's spooked when a boy addresses him by his name. Immediately, he hangs up the phone out of fear, but the phone keeps ringing. When Finney eventually answers the phone, the boy tells him not to hang up again. He continues saying that they have already met and that Finney's arm is mint. At that point, he realizes that he's speaking with Bruce. However, Bruce has no recollection of his own name or what he did when he was alive. He claims that although the phone rang for all the kids, only Finney heard it. Furthermore, he says that the grabber hears the phone as well, but he doesn't want to believe it. Then, Finney receives advice from Bruce regarding a spot on the floor where he can lift a tile and start digging. After that, Finney digs and flushes the dirt down the toilet all day long. In the meantime, in a dream, Gwen witnesses a flashback to Bruce's early years and the development of his baseball passion. She also has dreams in which Finney screams inside a house. Unable to handle it, she wakes up and immediately leaves in the middle of the night to look for Finney. The next day, Finney is given eggs and a drink by the grabber, who assures him that the food is hygienic. However, he doesn't lock the door when he leaves. Finney notices this and makes an attempt to leave, but suddenly the phone rings once again. When he picks up the phone, he hears a new voice that warns him not to go upstairs. However, he recognizes the guy as Billy, the neighborhood paperboy who was kidnapped a few months ago. During their conversation, Billy's ghost, whose face the grabber has sliced, appears next to him. He warns Finney that the grabber will be waiting upstairs for him with a knife and that the unlocked door is a trap. Furthermore, Billy refers to a cable that was left in a wall crack. Unable to miss this opportunity, Finney tries to go upstairs despite Billy's warning, but he can sense the grabber waiting for him. Hence, he decides to wait for a better time and returns back. A while later, Finney tries to climb out of the window by grabbing a rolled-up mat and sliding the cable up to the window bars, but his weight pulls the bars off, leaving him with no way to climb back up. Another flashback shows Billy's life as a paperboy, delivering papers with his dog. On this side of the story, Gwen shares her dreams with her father. According to him, her mother would frequently discuss experiencing dreams that resemble visions, exactly like Gwen does, and he believes that this is what ultimately led to her death by suicide. Therefore, he wants to save Gwen from making the same mistake as her mother. Still, Gwen remains optimistic that her dreams may help in finding Finney. Hearing this, her father helps Gwen to look for the house in her dreams. In the following scene, the detectives go to an area and talk to a man named Max. Quickly, Max invites them inside, saying that he's conducting his investigation into the missing children. He claims that the kidnapper must be from the area because he has a garage and can take the kids away unnoticed. Also, he informs the cops that he's new to the area and is temporarily residing with his brother. However, the investigators seem uninterested in his statements and leave the place. In the meantime, the grabber arrives with food and asks Finney his name. However, Finney lies and says that his name is Taylor. Hearing this, the grabber gets angry and he throws the food. Then, he hands Finney a newspaper covering the news about his disappearance. He claims that while he was considering releasing Finney, he now feels betrayed. Soon after, he leaves the basement, leaving the door unlocked. As the grabber leaves, Finney answers the phone when it's ringing again, but no one talks. Upstairs, waiting for Finney to make a mistake, the grabber is forcing himself to stay awake. Meanwhile, after eating the food that has been spilled, Finney goes to bed. Soon he awakens to find a dead body hanging from a rope with blood streaming from it. When the dead body points at the phone, Finney picks it up. Immediately, he recognizes the voice as it was Griffin, another victim of the grabber. Griffin informs him that the grabber enjoys a game called Naughty Boy with his victims. Turns out the grabber cannot move to the next section because Finney hasn't played the game. Meanwhile, Griffin says that the grabber has just gone to sleep. He explains that the grabber is locking the storm door with his old bike lock. He claims he can't recall the combination, but he has engraved it into the wall. Finney finds the numbers but is uncertain of the precise combination. Then he sneaks upstairs and tries every possible combination until he finally succeeds in opening the door. Unfortunately, the rattling sound causes Samson, the grabber's dog, to bark, waking up the grabber. Immediately, Finney flees the house, but still the grabber captures him as he's about to cross the street. While the neighbors turn on their lights, Finney is threatened by the grabber with immediate death if he makes a sound. Before bringing Finney back, he waits for the lights to go off. In the next scene, the phone rings again. This time, it's the local bully named Vance. In a dream, he's fighting with two children at an arcade after one of them messed with his high score. Then he's arrested by the police. In a flashback, Gwen is seen standing next to Vance, who is speaking to Finney on the police radio while she calls out to him. When they arrive in front of a home, Gwen tries to recall the number. Moments later, while searching for the house on her bike, she encounters the ghosts of the grabber's victims. In the meantime, Finney is advised by Vance to locate a freezer hidden behind a wall. He tries as hard as he can to push through the door, but is unsuccessful in doing so. Then he starts to sob in frustration as he realizes he will eventually die there. Suddenly, the phone rings and this time, it's Robin. Robin reminds Finney that he's been by his side the entire time, and now is the time for him to stand up for himself. Furthermore, he urges Finney to practice holding the phone like a weapon and asks him to stuff dirt into the receiver to give it weight. When Gwen wakes up, she calls the police to check the location of the house she saw in her dreams. On the other hand, Max also discovers that the kidnapped children are in his residence and that the kidnapper is his brother. Then Finney goes downstairs and finds Finney. Max reassures Finney that he's safe now and that he shouldn't worry. In the meantime, the grabber shows up and kills Max with an axe to the head. Then he makes an attempt to kill Finney, but Finney uses all of the guidance provided by the ghost kids. Hence, the grabber is dropped into the hole where he fractures his ankle after the cable hits the window bars. As the phone rings one final time, Finney makes the grabber listen to the sounds of his victims mocking him about his death. Then Finney snaps the grabber's neck and kills him. Then, in an effort to divert Samson, he takes a steak out of the freezer and hands it to him. In the meantime, the bodies of 5 children are discovered by the police as they search the house as per Gwen's directions. The house in which Finney was held is just across the street. As Finney opens the door and steps outside, Gwen notices her brother and runs to him. In the following scene, Finney returns to school again. The students consider him a legend for killing the grabber, and due to this, his previous bullies are also scared of him. The movie ends as he sits next to Donna, feeling more confident than ever before. The end. I hope you enjoyed it. What was your favorite part? Do comment down below. Make sure to hit the like button. It helps the channel tremendously, and if you haven't done already, consider subscribing. Now, let's continue with this video.